I hope that nobody will be able to see the answers on my laptop screen. Cool. So we're waiting for everybody to get registered. Could you please tell me how many participants we have? How many viewers are with us today? Do you know how many viewers we have? 91 person is now watching us. 92 persons. Oh, 92 with us, you mean, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 10 people present with us here at the venue. Well, about 100 people are watching this whole thing. How many? Oh, we have 60 at the quiz. So they have already registered. Okay, cool, cool. So I can read the first question if I got it right. If yes, then please give me a cue. Okay, question number 1. At the part of the fight against corruption, in 2007, the Indian government issued a series of banknotes of a certain denomination. And the question, which one? So now you have to choose an answer. And as it is also my first time on this website, I need one of the organizers to let me know when I can look at the answers. We're gonna wait for 1 minute. So we're waiting for a moment. So the right answer is denomination is 0. 0. As far as I understand, 0 rupees. So these banknotes look like real ones, but it is written on them, eliminate corruption at all levels, and I promise to neither accept nor give bribes. The activists say that these banknotes are popular, and for instance, police officers who demand bribes are paid 0 rupees. That's a fun fact to know, a very fun fact to know. As far as I understand, the system will tell us who was the first, and we will now see who is the winner. Or do we already see who is the winner? We'll see that in the end. Okay, we will say the name later. So if you get the information about you winning, that you have to wait for the prize, you will have to send us your contact details as an answer to an email that you have received, and then you'll be able to get your prize. Let's move on. Question number 2. From 1963 through 1993 in Canada, the Rhinoceros political party was registered. The party's main credo was, we promise to keep none of our promises. They proposed to resolve one problem by digging a canal from the Atlantic coast to the Pacific coast by hand. And they would simply ban statistics also. The question is, what problem were they trying to solve by these measures? By digging a canal and banning statistics. So what options do we have? Fighting a fire, avoiding tax, and animal protection, or unemployment. And now I'm ready to give the right answer. The right answer is unemployment. Exactly. This party was trying to fight this problem. I'd like to say that it was not a real party, it was a satire that was from the very beginning founded by the group of journalists. At a later stage, as far as I understand, the healthcare professionals joined this political party and they never came to power, even though for about 40 years they participated in all elections, and once they even came second. Question number 3. Officials all over the world have always been taking bribes, are taking bribes, and will be taking them. This has long been accepted as an inevitable evil, and the Ottoman Empire in its day even attempted to regulate bribery so that the state could at least reap some benefit from it. The question, what did they do? The state was allowing to take bribes for a fee. The part of the bribe was used for the charity. There was tax imposed on bribes, and the part of the bribes was used to construct temples and churches. You can answer. Okay, time's up. And the right answer is they impose official taxes on bribes. Well, as we do not have Ottoman Empire anymore, this probably was not the best decision. Next, question number 4, the last but one. Israeli police officers say that people should give them bribes with both hands. They say that it makes it easier for them to complete the sentence. And here I do not see any options. You have to type in the answer. Time is almost up. And the right answer is to put handcuffs on offenders. If you have written something similar to that, most likely you're the one getting the present. And I have a comment to add to that. Although allegations of political corruption by the Israeli leadership have been quite widespread in recent years, in 2020, Israel ranked 35th in Corruption Perception Index, indicating a low level of public and law enforcement tolerance of corrupt practices. And question number 5, the final. The management board of a soccer team that had lost a string of football matches terminated the contract with one of the team managers, accusing him of fraud related to the misappropriation of the money that had been given to him. What is most interesting is that the money the manager was accused of stealing was to have been used to commit another corruption-related crime. What did the management intend that money to be spent on? And options: on purchasing equipment, bribing referees, purchasing the equipment. And it seems to me that time is up, and the right answer is that the money was used to bribe referees. I wanted to give the last name of the person, but I'm not gonna do that. So now we're gonna get the names of our winners. So here we have 45 correct answers and 22 wrong answers. Now I'm gonna see the names or nicknames of those people who were given the right answers, and then I'll be ready to name our winners. Later, okay. I was given a cue that we're gonna do that slightly later. Okay. So do I have to follow this screen or not? First is Yakim Yermak. I'm sorry, I didn't have enough time to read who's 2 and who's 3. Next, Oksana K, and number 3, Ala Rebucha. Could you please also let me know how many prizes we have? 3. Okay, so I did the right thing. I named 3 people. Well, the rest of you, you know how it works. We're gonna have more questions after each of the not after every speaker, but we will still have more opportunities to get them prizes. So this was just the first attempt in doing quizzes, but let's move on. We're gonna have more later. Now we're gonna talk about things that are more serious. We're gonna talk about integrity in universities and is there light in the end of the tunnel? We will be talking more about Ukraine. Today we have Lydia Fesenko with us. Hi, Lydia. Good evening. Who is the member of the Ukrainian Association of Students. And you've been working in education for more than 5 years now. And you know what it is like tackling corruption in this area. Over to you. Thank you so much. Today is a very cool day to recall what it was like to be a student, because my public activity started with me and my peers trying to tackle corruption at a university. And could you please put up my presentation on the screen? We started tackling corruption. And first, we started destroying the vicious circle of corruption at our university, because student unions are not the best possible structure within universities. It knows that they normally get the money from the students and then they waste them, definitely not improving the life of the students within universities. Moreover, such students' unions back in 2014 were known as the ones that were covering all of the things that were done by the ministry back in the day. They clearly were helping to, they were helping the leadership of the universities back in the day, and they were flanking some of the students who were supporting the revolution, and they were the ones who gave us an impetus to start taking action, because we wanted to work with the local government in universities to fight for students' rights, and we wanted to do that. Next slide. And probably the most important when tackling corruption and other illicit enrichment activities, it is very important to have a good team. Back in the day, we had a very large team that was mainly working on implementing different projects. Next slide, please, which was helping take very important steps. And our tools were different educational activities, trainings, lectures. Aside from that, we were also going to national educational events where we could communicate with representatives of student government from other educational institutions and other student activists to share knowledge, to share experience, and explain how you can tackle illegal activities in a university. How can you improve your student life? Because university is the place where we spend the majority of our time, and we wanted to do us good rather than do us bad, to give us something positive and to help us shape us as citizens of our wonderful country, to help us understand what are the right things to do and what are the wrong things to do. We're also working with advocacy. And now I'd like to say a couple of words not only about advocacy, the classical rallies, protests that everybody knows about, but also advocacy, which requires a lot of routine work. We also participated in amending different provisions and documents, because what we say with words and expressing in media is one of the tools unlikely will not help us implement the necessary change if we do not have the proper documents according to which the university will be functioning. We also were advocating for change, and we succeeded. We even submitted suggestions regarding amendments to different laws, which would, for example, legalize the protection of the students, because corruption in universities of today is a thing that is quite hard to tackle. It is very difficult to prove. So any recordings, audio or video recordings, if the person does not know about them, they are not a proper evidence. So we wanted to advocate change in universities by reaching out to ministries, members of parliament, and suggesting amendments to different legal papers. So what have you managed to do? Well, back in the day, it was nothing. It was unbelievably difficult, but it demonstrated us and it gave us a very important experience. We understood how you shape the change because, for example, corruption, when there is a teacher and a student and it is beneficial for both parties, this is this vicious circle of corruption that you cannot break away from, that you simply cannot take and cut with the scissors. And when I'm saying that we have failed to submit certain changes, to submit certain amendments, proves that corruption at the level between a student and a teacher or student and a professor, at the level of an educational institution, when the money is being still stolen from procurements, and when people, as well as government, don't want to fight for positive change, to make this fight with corruption easier, demonstrates that we do not yet have it in us to solve this problem. And probably the most important thing that this taught us was that each of us, and I personally, have realized that it is very important to produce a proper educational process, to share experience, to understand that we're strong enough, that we're capable enough to implement change. Maybe we didn't do something huge, but still, some of the teachers who were corrupt were fired thanks to us. Some of the teachers and professors were doing some things in an illegal way, and they were also fired. And the best thing is that we have managed to change one school at a university that had the head of that school, who was like a totalitarian leader of that school, and their reform was carried out and implemented. And as it is very difficult to fire such people, this school was simply joined with another school, and this is how we have managed to rid of this huge problem at our alma mater. What bribe are you talking about? What amount? Well, to understand the whole situation and how absurd it is, there was a student who wanted to leave that school. She didn't get any knowledge. They were treated in a terrible way. And she was told that if she wants to leave, she has to bring a printer, and all other excuses, all other things will not work. And when she was trying to resist it, or any other student was trying to resist it, the head of that school was simply threatening children and saying them, if you leave now, you will never be able to get into any other educational institution. I'll do everything possible for you to not ever be a student anymore. And when we understand that students, that people, those who came to Kyiv, the capital city, who come from very different background, different families, some people are paying for their education. The others are learning free of charge, so the state pays for their education. We have to explain that they can fight for their rights. Maybe they were not taught that in their high schools. Maybe their parents never taught them to do that. Because sometimes the whole schools were threatened. And when we started doing service, we did research. We got answers, positive answers. But after us, the administration could also do surveys, and they got the opposite answers. But I would not be surprised that the students were forced to give the answer that the administration of education institution wanted to see. So what does our example demonstrate? That everything starts with tiny steps, with baby steps.
See that with this, we can actually break the vicious circle of corruption, but that cannot happen overnight. It cannot happen with a snap of your fingers. If you manage to reach some changes in your university, in your higher educational institution, that doesn't mean that all the students right away would think that giving bribes is a bad thing to do, and all the professors would not stop soliciting bribes if they used to do that in the past. But at least we had this kind of experience that we could share in 2014 and 2015, and I'm very happy that now I can share these stories with you. So now we are witnessing the situations when we can actually fight and we can actually counter people who even have some connections. We are the people who could inspire change. And in such situations, it is important not just to persuade our peers, it's also important to explain to our parents and grandparents that some things that seemed unrealistic to them in the past are actually quite real. We even managed to be successful with some other efforts. Our team was working at our university, but then after graduation, we joined different initiatives, different organizations, and we were supporting our country working from different institutions. For instance, I was a member of students' government, and I was also a member of a Ukrainian Association of Students, and I was even the chairperson there. So with the issues that we had to tackle over there, I had already the impression of how we could help and what measures could be actually taken. Because, you know, some events are important, some specific steps and actions. As even some entertaining actions and campaigns are important because they help to draw the attention to the issue of corruption. So we understood that we need to support our students not only in the combating of corruption, but also to help them in terms of realization why corruption is bad and what are the outcomes of corruption. Because sometimes, even if though we were doing our best in terms of trying to help and counter corruption and fight against the bribery system in a certain higher educational institution, the students were actually ready to take some steps, but when things got serious, like getting in touch with police, they were not ready to assume that kind of responsibility. That is why I believe that every step in this huge story of fighting against corruption in our country means that we should not be afraid to be motivated to root out corruption. And we should be able to speak out about that. And we should share our experience and be inspiration to the others. As you know, we are paying for all the services that we are getting from the education sector, and that is why we deserve to get those services provided to us fully. And we are mentally and physically healthy, and that is why we would like to have proper services at our educational institutions. Thank you, Lydia. You know, I have a few questions to you. When you were trying to fight the situation with the student union at the university, what was the reaction of the student union? Well, the reaction was rather negative, and in 2014, that was just 1 year after Maidan events when students were beaten up at Maidan. So we attended the meeting of the student union in 2014, and some of our members were able to attend, and the others were not able to attend. They had to actually fight for getting in, and quite often the student unions are led not by the students but by people who are 40 plus, and they are actually working at the administration of the higher educational institution. So when we attended this kind of meetings, we were the disruption. And I understand that the things that we were doing were not really proportionate, and they were not the right measures, but at least we were ready to find. Well, yes, so you were ready to be the real disruption. Yes, we were ready to do that. And, we were thinking about the red line, and we were waiting till the point where we are going to cross that line. So we were trying to make it in a liberal way. And we wanted to have no backlash. And when you feel that simply some thugs are not letting you in when you want to attend the meeting of the student union, and that they are actually ready to use force, we were making records of that. We were filming these situations, and when we told other people about this, everyone who is aware of how student unions are supposed to work were very much on our side. We're very supportive. But at the beginning, the administration of the university was in favor of student union position. But many people at the university and outside the university were supportive of us, as well as some media representatives, national media, and also smaller media outlets. I guess that was because of some fear in terms of marring the reputation of the university. And we knew that we have to strike a balance for the students' union functioning and student self-government. How did you do that disruption? How did you do that subversive activity? We had my colleague who would just march in the room chanting the student union is for students, and we kept on chanting that. So every time we were making some suggestions when we attended the student unions, they only nodded their heads, but nothing was changed. So you were not just trying to be the disruption and make this meeting stop. You were trying to take some adequate measures. Yes, yes. At the beginning, we were actually submitting some proposals. You said that for some students, this bribery system was beneficial because they were able to get their certificates, educational certificates, and diplomas. So, how were you able to fight this system? Because, this bribery system was of benefit and is of benefit to some students as well as to some professors who are getting low salaries. Well, yes, this story is not just the story of bribery itself. Yes, this is the story of some professors being underpaid, and some people not having no need of specific knowledge, and having just the desire to get a diploma. But for me, this bribery is not a norm in the world I live in. So when I understand that there are some corrupt practices at different stages of my life, I still don't want that to happen to anyone else. For instance, my sister, who is 9 years old, I don't want her to take this for granted. And there are many people in our country to whom we should provide the world that is free of corruption. We would want to create the world where corruption is not tolerated. Yes, we know that our grandparents and elderly citizens might say that bribery is all right. that's a norm, that's business as usual. And even my peers may say that that's all right. That's just the way it is. But my goal and everyone who is with me in this fight is to create this kind of space, this kind of environment in which corruption is not tolerated, and people are not afraid to report corrupt practices to law enforcement bodies. And I'm not alone in this fight. There are many people who are watching us right now who believe that this celebration is important. There are these people in our country who are very encouraging. For instance, my this is my sister, and I'm inspired by her. And it might be your siblings, or there might be other people who inspire you in your life, and you are fighting for them. I know that I will not give up, and I will not give bribes. Have you ever had any interaction with a Kyiv utility company that provides heating? Well, I don't mean that you need to bribe a heating utility company, but I mean that there are some companies that are highly bureaucratic. Well, at least for me, the interaction is rather difficult because I feel like exploding and losing it the moment I start talking to them. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you for sharing your experience. And I would like to remind you that we were joined by Lydia Vasenko, who is a member of Ukrainian Association of Students. Thank you, Lydia. I think, Lydia, we can let you go right now. And now we would like to tell you that the issue that Lydia brought up is not the problem that exists purely in Ukraine. And we have our colleague from Armenia who will explain you that this is David Petrosyan, who works for Restart Student Civic Initiative that is functioning as an ombudsperson for students. And this is the organization that deals with corruption in the universities. So we are ready to hear from David, who will tell us about his path of combating corruption in Armenia. David, hello.
Hi, my name is David. I'm from Armenia. I represent Restart Student Civic Initiative, and thank you for this invitation and this great event. I think this sharing of experiences will be useful for all the people watching us and also for us, because the work that we do is ongoing, and it's very useful to listen to other opinions, to other experiences, and sometimes even to practice them. First, I want to mention that the experience and the situation described by my Ukrainian colleague is not unique. There were a lot of similarities which we also meet in Armenia, and I think these similarities can be met in all post-Soviet countries, because this structure where corruption is penetrated has a lot of similarities. That's why these points can be very similar. Our first steps, which we did, started in 2017 when I was in my third year, and we had the news telling us that the discounts were cancelled. Like the students, there was a rule that the students who had grades upper than 18 received 20% discounts for their tuition fees. And when we started to get interested why the executive body of the university made such decision, they told us that there is no money. There was no money at the university. This sentence we heard a lot after this initiative, and we tried to understand what is the problem, why the university doesn't have money. This was our first action. There were a lot of meetings. We did class strikes. There were meetings with the rector. We met with the prime minister of Armenia of that time, and we reached our goal. These discounts were renewed, but we tried to understand why there is such problem, that there was no money. And we understood that the problem was not that there was no money, but the problem was that there is an effective usage of resources. Because, for example, according to a decision made by our second president in 2013, they opened a foundation, a youth foundation, and all the universities had to pay 2% of their budget to that foundation, which was closed after the revolution because a lot of scandals, corruption problems. And during that time, we started to voice up about these problems. We said why the university should pay 2% of their budget to foundation, which is not transparent, which is not accountable. And there were a lot of unlogistic things. But then we dig up and we understood that this foundation was opened in order to help the ruling party, which was refused during the revolution, and that was a corruption chain, because the students which were helping this youth foundation, especially the student unions, which were very unaccountable and not transparent, received some kind of financial resources from that foundation. So this was our first steps, and we understood that this authoritarian regime which we had was directly connected with the university system, and it was used for recruiting students and repressing other opinions. The second, our initiative, which was bigger, it is even considered to be the biggest during the Third Republic of Armenia. So starting from the collapse of the Soviet Union, was against a decision made by the National Assembly, according to which all the students studying at master degree, bachelor, and PhD were to stop their education and go to army. We were saying that this solution is not a good solution, and it's disastrous not only for the education but also for the army, because the arguments which they were bringing to reform the army were not true, were not trustworthy, and we had our suggestions, which in the future became like true and more visible for others. During this action, we had class strikes, we had hunger strikes for 5 days. We met with the Prime Minister, with the head of National Assembly. We closed the university. This is like the second picture already. Can I continue?
I would like to apologize for some technical issues. As soon as I have the sign from our tech team that the issue is fixed, we will continue the presentation of David. And David, if you can hear me, I will read out the questions and hopefully you will respond to the question. So we have a question from our viewers. Are student union members able to interact with the state anti-corruption bodies? And if yes, how? Do they have any common actions?
So the problem of student unions is one of the sensitive ones. I had like great news 2 days ago. One of our branches, which is situated in Gyumri, this is the second largest city of Armenia, managed to change the codex, and one of our members became the president of the student union. The aim was to make the codex and this system of student representation more transparent, participative, competitive, and transparent. Unfortunately, the other student unions, these bodies which we have, haven't undergone significant changes after the revolution. That's why these student unions are, in my opinion, like not very interested in the social political events. They are like more party concentrated, and that's why for me it's difficult to speak about these student unions. But there are student organizations which try to work with government, with these bodies which handle with corruption. For example, our organization has come up with 3 research. First, about the financial issues of the university. Second, with the student rights protection, and teachers' right protection. And the third one was about what steps can be taken by the university to have more effective governing system, which is also connected with these corruption issues. But at the same time, one should mention that the government during these last 2 years was not very responsive to these changes and tried to stay neutral. That's why a lot of important changes have not been implemented after the revolution, and we still have a lot of difficulties and problems at universities.
David, thank you for your story. Could you share the story of your motivation? What inspires you to fight against corruption?
The first motivation, the greatest one, is to have a better country, and it's very simple. If we want to live in a better country, we should have better universities. If we want to have better universities, we should have universities which have very low level of corruption. If we don't want to take part in solving these problems, we are going to having these problems in future, and this means that we are going to have problems in our own state. This is the main motivation, to receive better education in order to have better country.
Thank you, David. Do you have any issue that is similar to what Lydia mentioned? Do you have anything like that in Armenia, when the issue of corruption, when bribery is actually of benefit to some students and some professors, and I mean, only some anti-corruption fans and activists are fighting against corruption?
Yeah, I caught your question. I can say that these
Unfortunately, we lost connection with David.
security,
David, if you
if
can
they are
hear
like this,
us, thank you very much.
patron is relevant to
Thank you for your story.
happy.
I hope that the experience you shared would be useful to our viewers and to those to whom they will share this story. And now we'll move on.
Our next guest will come from Moldova. Anti-corruption activism. Well, our next speaker will demonstrate that this topic is something that not only students deal with, but that even younger people do that. So our youngest speaker is Lada Shimon, and she is the proof of that. She is still a schoolgirl, and she's a volunteer at Anti-Corruption Center in Moldova. And I would like to give the floor to her so that she can tell us about what she has already managed to achieve. Hello.
Hello, I cordially greet you all tonight. I would like to quickly introduce myself. On behalf of National Anti-Corruption Center, I'd like to welcome you today. My name is Vlada Shimon, and I am a volunteer. Being a student in the 11th form at Theoretical Lyceum Mihai Viteazul in Chișinău, Moldova, I love getting involved in many interesting activities like volunteering, participating in many community service projects, and others. My volunteer work is my passion. From a young age, I began looking through volunteer manuals, awaiting for the day I finally turned 16, the age required by most organizations for their volunteers. Since I was unable to volunteer with established organizations, I took it upon myself to start my own small volunteer projects, which later expanded into much larger projects. I have been a volunteer at National Anti-Corruption Center since November 2019, because I think that corruption has reached such a level that it affects human rights. The National Anti-Corruption Center, in partnership with the UNDP Moldova, engages a group of around 50 young volunteers who participate in various activities to promote anti-corruption and integrity values among their peers and public. When I first started volunteering here, everything seemed complicated. But once you understand what you can do to provide integrity and to motivate your peers, you have the necessary support and your forces are unlimited. Firstly, I got involved in a public debate about the method of punishing against corruption. Then I participated in the initial training where I got to know my colleagues, our first projects, and more information about corruption and its forms of manifestation. We, volunteers, initiated a project contest named Pro Integrity Quiz that we went with in many schools from different cities in Moldova. Staying at home in quarantine, I made different videos in which I promoted the values a correct person should have. Also, I was filmed in our integrity dictionary, saying different definitions of words like bribery, denunciation, gift, integrity, and many others in order to let everyone know about them and to promote values. In summer, I made videos urging other people to participate in our summer online school, our first online school with the support of UNDP Moldova. At this summer school participated so many people, glad to know more and more. This year, we have prepared a series of information, awareness, and anti-corruption education activities in all public institutions in the cities of our country within the campaign and Anti-Corruption Day in your city. The presence of anti-corruption volunteers of National Anti-Corruption Center has already become a beautiful tradition. Finally, I can say that my activities don't stop here. Volunteering at the National Anti-Corruption Center gave me the chance to meet ambitious young people with the same ideals, values, and visions. I attended anti-corruption trainings, anti-corruption summer schools, flash mobs, filming in video spots, study visits at the National Anti-Corruption Center, and a multitude of activities that promote integrity in society, and especially among young people. I carried out a series of activities that helped me to develop my communication skills, to work in a team, and to learn things that will help me in my professional future. Supported by Nation Anti-Corruption Center and United Nations Development Program, we, anti-corruption volunteers, are developing our communication platforms to combat practices that generate corruption, especially in education. We, the young people, say that we want changes at home, in society, and in the country. Corruption cuts off our chances of making these changes, and we are doing nothing to stop it. Well, some don't. My colleagues and I, the anti-corruption volunteers, react to illegalities and talk openly about how important it is to have people of integrity in Moldova. So, the heart of a volunteer is not measured in size, but by the depth of the committed to make a difference in their lives and in the lives of others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vlada. Thank you so much for your speech. Today we were saying that it can be a challenge to engage youth to anti-corruption movements. In your opinion, how can you motivate young people to implement change in the society?
Well, let me think. I think that motivating teenagers is a very simple way, because all of us are thinking that corruption is something that needs to be eliminated through the society, because it affects our rights and it commits very much problems to our society.
And what examples of corruption have you personally come across?
I think that cheating is also a corrupted way, because this is the most how to say, interesting and the least wanted thing through me and my colleagues, and others. But I think that for me as a student is a very how to say, not wanted thing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your speech. I wish you to have corruption-free future. And we move on. And now we're gonna have a small break. And the break will be dedicated to yet one more quiz, and you will be able to win some prizes and check your knowledge. I'd like to remind you that in the chat box and on the screen, you can see a link to joinmindquiz.com website. So please click on that link. You have to enter the code that you presently see on the screen. It should already be there. And I will be reading questions out loud. You have to pick the correct option. The one who is the fastest and gives right answers will get the prize. And we're gonna have 3 winners. We will find out their names in the end of this round of questions. And now you'll be able to get power banks from USA Sachi and the dumb bags. So we wait for all of you to enter the code you're presently seeing on the screen. Okay. We have 4 questions waiting for us. All of them have to do with corruption. You can see the website and you have just seen the code. So question number 1. In 2015, statues of these 3 persons were erected, and this monument has already taken a world tour. This artistic installation presents 3 persons standing in chairs, while a 4th empty one represents a tribune for public speaking. During its tour, the statue was even displayed on Plus destinations during the 30th session of the UN Human Rights Council. Who are these people? And options: singers, whistleblowers, famous actors, tourists. I think you can even recognize some by their face or the hairstyle. So the correct answer is whistleblowers. It demonstrates Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, and Chelsea Manning. They stand on 3 chairs and the 4th chair is empty, which demonstrates that one more place is vacant, so anyone can do the same thing. The next question. In Finland, the campaign headquarters of Finnish presidential candidate Tarja Halonen addressed the electorate with the following message: "Save the state, 10 million euro. Vote for Tarja Halonen." What 4 words are missing at the end of the previous sentence? For completely different reasons, a similar slogan was used in 2014 elections in Ukraine. Save the state, 10 million euro. Vote for Tarja Halonen, and 4 words that are missing. And answers in the first round. So we have managed to also save up several million hryvnia in the first round as well. Holding elections is indeed very costly process. It requires once, one mathematician said that lots of people are moving to other countries. And according to Ukrainian constitution, the question regarding this thing is not something that the people decide upon. What is this thing? What are the people running away from to other countries? And what is it that people do not have influence on? Alimony, corrupt people, tax, entrance exams. Okay, time is up, and the right answer is taxes. So people run away from taxes in America, and in Ukraine, it is not the people who can influence the tax matters. And one more question. In the 19th century, many people were jealous of Jean-François Vidocq, who later became policeman. They said that Vidocq only is trying to apprehend petty corrupt officials, but is releasing corrupt generals. People said that even his subordinates are stealing money. Then Jean had to introduce one small thing to the uniform of his team to put the end to all the gossips. What was that? And what is this thing that the French police is still wearing? The French sortie, the red beret, the black belt, the blue beret, the white gloves are the options. Time's up, and the right answer is, I guess many people have guessed, the white gloves. So sortie, or the National Security Department, is considered the organization which served as an example for Scotland Yard in England and FBI in the USA. Sortie was created by a doc in 1812, made the example of Napoleon's secret police. And while the system is calculating who are the winners, here they come, first, second, and third. Daniel Koitsan, Alexander Grunik, and Volodymyr Goncharov. Congratulations! Please share your contact details so that we know how can we deliver you the present that you have won. And now we're ready to move on. Next, we'll be talking about the fact that the European community of students is also actively discussing everything that has to do with corruption. Now, Rajko Golovic from Montenegro will join us. He works with students of governance and accountability in universities. Rajko, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good day, everyone, and greetings from my side. I'm Rajko, and I'm originally from Montenegro, but I'm executive committee member of the European Students' Union. We, as the umbrella organization of the National Union of Students in ESU, work a lot when it comes to discussing and reacting to the problems of corruption, especially corruption in higher education area. Personally, I work in the sector of ESU that deals with public responsibility, governance, and financing of higher education. And the issue of corruption is very much tackled in there. We find it very much interlinked with the academic integrity matter. And that's why we perceive corruption as the action of achieving interests in morally or ethically not acceptable way. And by corruption, we do perceive all those actions such as bribing, paying, counter-favoring, etc. For us, in ESU, corruption is a threat to the education sector as a whole, but not only education, but the society in general. But one of the most important points in this is the necessity of having involvement of students in all parts, in all segments when it comes to combating problem of corruption. This mission of combating corruption is something that should be tackled together with teachers, students, researchers, administrative personnel, and especially policymakers at the national level. I think that the society as a whole shares a responsibility to confront corruption in all its forms, including plagiarism, contract cheating, nepotism, abuse of power, paying for favors, etc. Students are especially well endangered when it comes to this. Since they are in a sort of a persisting power relations to their teachers, deans, teaching assistants, etc. So abusing power by those persons who are in persisting power relation very much affects the students and creates a context where their rights are not respected and where they are actively repressed. The solution for this problem is, of course, achieving the greater involvement of students in all activities, introducing diverse teaching methods on corruption from the early stage of enrolling in education, designing curricula in a sense that is student-centered learning, and assessment and clear sanctions for those who commit corruptional behavior. I personally come from a country that certainly did not have very much successful post-socialist transition. And in the last 20 years, it was extremely challenging period for combating corruption in Montenegrin higher education sector and in Montenegrin society in general, because in my country, money is often seen as a catalyst for all the procedures, and institutional reforms have been made, but it is very much questionable whether they have been successful, in a sense that corruption and all those of types of non-ethical behavior have been eradicated. I can say that in the last 20 to 30 years, Montenegrin society has been only partly democratic. It was at some point also authoritarian. That's why the democracy could not live it up as it should have been the case. And of course, it has made a certain negative reflections on the higher education sector. Why did this reflect negatively on higher education? Well, the concept of auto-reproduction of corruption is very much existing in Montenegrin society. We sort of got used to pay for everything, and for example, giving presents to the doctors, even though they are paid to provide you with healthcare, is a very common practice, and it is just the very small example on how problematic all this can be at the very lowest level, for example, in that healthcare sector. There were a lot of problems when it comes to corruption that I even personally faced. For example, the problem of diploma mills is a very common thing here in not only Montenegro, but the Western Balkans region in general. In the neighboring countries, especially in Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, there are plenty of higher education institutions with questionable references. Also, they became very, let's say, popular in the last decade, when a lot of the state officials didn't even have a higher education diploma. So they enrolled at those shady higher education institutions in neighboring countries, and somehow managed to earn their degrees, higher education degrees, in like a year or even less, for some speedy track, in some speedy track concept of earning diploma. The problem especially starts when it comes to the so-called importing of and recognizing these diplomas in the Montenegrin market, higher education market, because according to the Lisbon Recognition Convention, all diplomas should be recognized if they are earned in the countries that are signatories to this convention. So our government easily recognized all these diplomas as valid, and now our bureaucracy and our public service is facing a huge problems of having non-competent people with not sufficient knowledge having a position in the public sector. These diploma mills are not regulated, and the students from the higher education institutions in Montenegro have been protesting a lot for the necessity of having a different position of our state institutions when it comes to accepting these diplomas. But the problem starts because many of the people having these, let's say, fake diplomas have been state officials who are very much related to the ruling party, and the party stood behind them. And in a society that is very, very small as Montenegrin is, it is really not easy to change this, because the ruling party has been controlling everything, including higher education sector, including judicial system, including the general work of the public institutions. In a country as small as Montenegro, and I'm not sure if you know how small is Montenegro, but the population of the whole country is 600,000 inhabitants, which is like 1/5 or 1/6 of population of Kyiv itself. So in this type of society where literally everyone knows everyone or is related to the people in power, it was extremely difficult for students to react and to achieve the goals they have been fighting for. Our union of students, both the National Union of Students and also those unions, small local students unions, worked a lot. They did a lot of promotions. They did a lot of activities, protests, appeals in media, but the final result was not very much successful initially. But the general feeling now is that it has been changing a lot. Finally, we have a new government whose first working day was this Monday, and there is a strong promise for them that they will tackle this issue, and they will all those students' requests that have been articulated, they will be listened to. Since this was the first time in 30 years of Montenegrin history that we had democratic change of power and the new democratic government is in force, the students' expectations are that they will be positive and that this huge corruption issue of diploma mills will be tackled. I'm not sure how much time I do have left, but I'm very much open to all your questions. Maybe even discuss some other types of cases of corruption in Montenegro. So feel free to ask. I'm very much open to get back on this very interesting topic. And thank you. And also at the end, I want to thank for the invitation for taking part in this activity.
Thank you, Raiko. Thank you very much for your story. We can tell you a lot about corruption in Ukraine. We also have a lot to share. But I was also wondering, and our viewers are also wondering about this. Do you know about any other European models of combating corruption, and which model is to your most liking?
I would say the model, the most productive model is the one that makes sure that the voice of student is listened, and the model that fosters the necessity of better student engagement in involvement. Very often, students are scared to react. This is because very often. This is also because it is not rare case that the officials don't even react on student requests. That's why I think that the model of empowering student population, student national union of students and student councils, and teaching them properly from the earliest higher education, for the earliest level of education on the corruption importance, of eradicating corruption importance is for me. I think it is a prerequisite for the successful solution of the problem.
What, in your opinion, is the reason for corruption in education?
I would say that there are several reasons, but probably the main ones could be, from, let's say, my national perspective, would be the economic one. For example, professors not being paid enough, or not being regularly paid. So they sort of they think that in this persisting power relation they have to student, they see this as a possibility to, by corruption processes, they could earn certain additional amount of money, even though it's not illegal. Apart from the economic reasons, I would also say that one of the possibilities for the corruption existing is also lack of transparency when it comes to the exercising state budget. In Montenegro, almost 1/5 of the annual state budget goes for education, but controlling and auditing how the spending of this, for us, huge amount of money goes is barely done, mostly because higher education institutions are not transparent, and especially NGO sector in the last few years has been very vocal about this problem in Montenegro, that our higher education, our public higher education institutions, namely the University of Montenegro, lacks a lot of transparency when it comes to the financial reports and everything. So I would say that there is not sort of a general attitude that sees corruption as big problem as it in reality is. We often underestimate the importance of corruption. That's why it happens that it has managed to enter every pore of our society, including healthcare sector, education sector, basically everywhere.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rajko, for sharing. So we had the representative from Montenegro with us, Rajko Golovic, who told us about his experience of the work in the student organization. And now we are getting back to Ukraine. Our last speaker for the day, Ivan Nikolaenko, he is the co-founder of a student initiative titled StudWatch that originates from Kyiv Polytechnical Institute, but its work now goes far beyond the Kyiv Polytechnic Institute. Ivan used to be an engineering student, and then he led the student self-government, and that's how it all started.
Great, my name is Ivan. My name is Ivan, and it is true that I studied at Kyiv Polytechnic University for 6 years, and then I became the head of our student community. And to make long story short, we have revealed a 40 million corrupt scheme in our university and organized a rally for 500 people The president of our school was involved in that, and I hope that we have managed to save up lots of money to the university and taught a lesson to the students. So first I'd like to share that story and afterwards give a couple of pieces of advice how you better tackle corruption. And I have a small presentation. Let us start with a quick story, which is on slide 2. When I became the head of the student community, we started asking lots of questions about where does the money go to? Why do we have such poor conditions as what you can see in the pictures? Why do we have to live in conditions like that? Why does administration purchase some extremely expensive furniture? And while we were asking those questions, we tried to cooperate with administration of the university. We hope that they simply are not aware of these problems and we're gonna come tell them about these problems and we will solve them together. But the administration started reacting in a really weird way. They didn't want to engage in a dialogue. Then we started asking additional questions. For example, why the Kyiv Polytechnic University has been constructing a dormitory for over 10 years. And instead of that, on the land plot, lots of high-rise buildings were constructed. Then the administration tried to, sorry, could you please go back? Then the administration tried to assert pressure on us. And they even tried to kick me and one more person out of the university. I started getting letters from police. And we realized that it's not the administration that is not aware of corruption, but rather administration is the main reason for this corruption, because the administration creates it. And as it is known, from what you can see on the next slide, corruption has the name. And now we can see these names on the next slide. So one of the persons whom you can see in many anti-corruption investigations, this is Mr. Kovalov, who is the vice president, and you can see what are the conditions in the dormitories of the university. And we were living in conditions like that for a long time. This is because Mr. Kovalov was given subcontracts to his own companies, and he did that for more than 40 million Ukrainian hryvnia over a couple of years. And we started asking administration, how is that even possible that the vice president is the one who is giving the money to pretty much himself, who is doing kickbacks? And administration never reacted back. But then we found the guys from the student self-government found the property that was not declared but belonged to the president, vice president, some property that was of total almost 3 million euro in other countries, and have realized that the private university that belongs to the president is leasing the land from another university, and we had to pay additional 10 million hryvnia over the years. And when we have found out, we put the puzzle pieces together and we have realized that we have to live in very bad conditions. In the university land plot, huge high-rise buildings of 20 floors are being constructed, but at the same time, university never has enough money. And the president of school, has his own private house in California, as the one that you'll see in one of the next slides. So corruption is affecting every student, as the slide says. And if administration of the university is corrupt, they are the ones who are destroying the quality of education. What did we do next? We decided that we're not gonna live with it. We were so mad that we have to live in the condition that you can see on the next slide. But at the same time, the president has a 2-story house in California, which he's trying to hide and never declares it, doesn't want to really reveal it. And when we have realized it, we decided that we're not gonna live with it. So we organized several rallies that you will soon see on the slides. We have organized first one rally for 500 people. We have contacted the journalists. We decided to also go to a court. And what changed? The vice president who was corrupt was fired, and the administration was trying to protect him as much as possible. I'm talking about the president, the National Anti-Corruption National Agency for Corruption Prevention said that yes, it is true that the president did not declare this and that property, but unfortunately he was not punished, because I think that the president managed to somehow agree on settling it. It was possible with the previous NAPC. And we realized that we're the ones who require good quality education, and it is only us who will be fighting for it. That is why we started revealing it all and telling about it all. On one of the next slides, you will be able to see one of the student rallies, and at one more slide. So this is the story. The vice president was fired, and regarding the president, the National Agency for Corruption Prevention said, yes, he is guilty. But then students got faster some of the furniture, because then the vice president's companies stopped working with the university. But the main thing is that the students realized that you do not have to live with it, that you have to express your dissatisfaction. Because if the students don't do that, nobody will create better conditions for them, and nobody's going to give them better education. Now, the second half of my presentation, how can you tackle corruption and what tools do you have for that? Here, I mainly focus on the Ukrainian context and Ukrainian situation, but I believe that some advice can be helpful for anyone. First thing we should understand is that corruption truly affects everyone, no matter what area we take. Corruption in administration at the top level affects everybody without exceptions, because the quality of services drops. Second, if we don't tell about corruption, most likely nobody will find out about it. We should be the ones who want to get good quality services. That is why we have to fight against corruption. Next, it is quite simple. You have to simply compare the promises and public statements by potential corrupt persons with what the law prescribes, with what we see in real life. And on the next slide, you can see that you just have to simply compare what happens in real life with what is being promised. For example, administration in our Polytechnic University was ignoring the temperature in the university. There are certain norms and regulation which say that the temperature inside the building should be 20 to 24 degrees. And we have managed to realize that students keep complaining about how cold it is in classrooms. That is always 10 to 13 degrees above Celsius. And we started asking administration, how is that possible? And here's the example of how the administration was not reacting properly. They were saying, no, everything is fine. It always was okay. Everything is fine with temperature. Nobody's ever complaining. And we were experiencing that for several years in a row. So we started raising a question, why does that happen? The same thing has to do with corruption. We saw students complaining about corrupt professors, poor teaching, about bribes being demanded from them, about university taking too long to repair and renovate some of the facilities. And we saw what the administration of the university said and what was happening in real life. And when we realized that there is a gap between what the promises are and what is prescribed by the law, we started asking a question, is there a corrupt component to it? And we had to find it. And there were some easy to use tools, which I am even using at work now, and I keep looking for corruption. Simple toolkit that I use and that many people fighting corruption use. And the first tool is simply your search engine, Google or Yandex, and internet archives. If you live in Ukraine, there is a huge range of different sources. Some of them are free of charge, some of them for a fee, but they are not that expensive even for Ukraine, where you can see who transferred money to whom, what are the ties between people, and look for corruption. Next. All of those links are clickable in the presentation, so you can check them. And when you think that you have managed to find something, you have to tell about it. In Ukraine, the student communities have lots of Telegram channels or profiles on other social media where the students communicate. And this is where the students who are affected by corruption have to tell what is the source of the problem. And this normally is the first step towards solving the problem of corruption. Those who were affected by it tell about it. Then you're going to have lots of students at your rallies. Then you're going to have lots of people who come across this problem. Then you're going to have lots of people who are affected by it and who want to help you in solving it. Often, when you're just trying to solve it within your university, helps, but sometimes it doesn't. And here, the most important thing is that you shouldn't be afraid of the administration that starts to certain pressure you or doesn't do much. Just do not stop. Keep moving on. And you have shared that with regional journalists or journalists working at the national level. Tell them about corruption. Tell them about the fact that somebody's stealing your money. And Ukraine is quite good for that. There are lots of local and national initiatives and lots of journalists, and even a number of institutions, state institutions that are tackling corruption. They really do that. Sometimes they're quite good at that. Sometimes they could do better, but still, you should reach out to them. So this is the recipe. The most important thing you should keep in mind that you should not tolerate nonsense. You cannot believe people who say that everything is fine and good, even though it's not. You shouldn't be a genius to understand that money is flowing in a wrong direction. You just have to see what is prescribed by the law and what is officially promised and compare it to what is happening in the real life. But please, don't live with that. The conclusion, there is money and there is lots of money, but the problem is that it is being either spent in a wrong way or being robbed intentionally. And as we understand that we need good quality services, we're those people who have to fight for these services in the first place. Good quality service very often mean absence of corruption. That's why we have to fight corruption, because normally this is the main reason. And you have to keep in mind that we should not tolerate others people, bad attitudes towards us. This is it. Thank you. It was Ivan Nikolenko with you. If you have any questions, I will answer them. Thank you so much, Ivan. I'm sorry for pronouncing your last name in a wrong way. We have a question. Was NABU interested in that, or only NAPC was interested in that? We also reached out to NABU, but the case very quickly was transferred to police. And after that, nothing happened. Do you need some evidence, clear evidence to fight corruption, say when you go to such institutions as NABU, etc.? Of course, sure. Together with boys and girls, we have submitted the information from the registers. For example, the property in Montenegro, we Googled it. But in Google, there was a link to the Montenegro state register, which was mentioned that there was a company that belongs to the president of university and his son. The same has to do with houses in the US. There were some gossips in the university that they own something in the United States of America. So we found it and then simply shared screenshots with NABU and NAPC. Your story, for me personally, you're a hero, because when I was a university student and lived in a dormitory, we were repairing everything on our own. We had to purchase the doors to have them in our room. And I would have never thought that you can actually fight that. I thought that this is the way things are. Well, the majority of students also perceived it like that. And even I was doing the renovation in my room in a dorm myself. And then a company came that started doing the renovation in our room, but they were not really doing it. They were just there for a couple of months. And it was the same story for all of the dorms. The majority of students decided to live with it. But we, as the part of the student council, realized that we cannot live with that. How many allies did you have? How large was your team? Those people who cheered for you and worked with you on that? About 2 to 3% were looking for information in different registers. But we also had a committee with about 20 to 30 people who helped us to organize rallies and anti-corruption school that we started organizing for students afterwards. But at the rally, we had about 500 people, students and teachers and professors. Okay, how much time did it take you from the thought, okay, I don't like them repairing the bathroom in my room for so long, to the moment when the vice president was fired. Well, it took quite some time, about a year or even 18 months. I already graduated the university, and only after I have graduated, we have published the information together with the journalists. And probably 6 months later, the vice president was found guilty, and he said that he's the one who is resigning. Do you maybe know how he reacted? Well, the person, everything was fine. So good. And then 2 or 5 students, those who have to basically bow to him, have destroyed all of his plans. Well, I hope that it made him really, really nervous. I hope that both president and vice president of the university felt worried and concerned, that they realized, geez, I can actually go behind the bars for what I have done. And what have this story taught you? What lessons have you learned? Well, one lesson, that you cannot live with that. If somebody treats me or other people bad, and corruption is treating people in a bad way, or even if the state does not fulfill its promises, then I'm sorry, but I'm gonna demand them to do it. How much did the conditions change? Is the temperature better in classrooms? And what about conditions in the dormitories? Well, in the dormitories, there are other companies that do not belong to the vice president. As far as I know, it takes them less time to do the renovation. The furniture used to be purchased through the companies that belong to vice president. They are not being purchased from those companies anymore. Just ordinary wardrobes made of wood, 1 meter broad. They were purchased at a very expensive, high price. And if you check the prices, for this price of 3,000 hryvnia, you can buy a really, really cool wardrobe, and it's not going to fall apart. And talking about the temperature in the classroom, the administration is now trying to do the insulation in the university, but they are trying to do that carefully so that they keep the facades of the building as pretty as they used to be. And it's been 2 years, but they still are trying to do something with this, and that we have been complaining about. And this probably is the best motivation of why you should do that, because it can make your situation better. Absolutely. Because if it's not us who care for better quality, for better education, better living conditions, nobody's gonna do it for us, unfortunately. Okay, thank you. That was Ivan Nikolenko. He's the co-founder of StudVote CSO, Kyiv Polytechnic University.
And now it's high time to announce the most active participants of our chat box, those who post questions to our speakers, and they will get the trendy hoodie from America House. So I will be the one picking the winner. And I'm going to do that right now. So you will pin the blame on me if you are unhappy with not being the winner. Okay, so I'm choosing the winner, the one who posed the best question. This is the question about National Anti-Corruption Bureau. This is Sergei Khomyuk. Okay, so you'll get the hoodie. Please leave your contact details. And with that, I'm ready to close our today's event. Summing it all up, we saw that corruption is not only Ukrainian issue. We have seen that corruption is mostly flourishing in the environment where no one is trying to tackle it. And most likely it cannot be eradicated completely, but if we fight against corruption, we can decrease its extent. And the case of Ivan sharing his story of their fight for the better living conditions of students in the dormitories and the room temperature at the classrooms at the university. This is something that was unimaginable for me until now. So that's a real inspiration. I would like to thank everyone who's been with us. Thank you for being interested in anti-corruption efforts. Stay tuned.